everybody. Welcome to episode. What did I just say a few seconds ago that it was?
134?
144. 144. Episode 144, everybody. I'm Connor Dempsey. On the other end of this microphone, well, his microphone is Dustin Weldon. Hi, Dustin.
Hey, everybody. I'm definitely not in the same clothes you just saw me in
And
yesterday.
I appear to not be, because I thought about that. Because it's a different day and I don't wear the same clothes twice.
I know. I never do that.
I do that a lot. More than I should.
Well, that's okay, Hooper.
Yeah.
You do you.
I will. I will keep doing me. We're here today to talk about, if you caught our last episode talking about Bright, hope you enjoyed that. Today we're going to talk about something that's actually in theaters and not available for stream. So if you want to see this film, you're going to have to shell out a little bit extra money, but you probably will, because that film is Star Wars: The Last Jedi, directed by Rian Johnson, written by, oh God, who wrote this?
Rian Johnson.
Did he wrote and directed?
He did.
Oh, good for him.
I don't know why I almost said Ryan Gosling, but that's definitely not the same person.
No, they're not the same person. They don't really look that much alike either.
No, they don't.
Well, yeah, so this is a film that's kind of been splitting people a little bit. We're not going to spoil anything since this film is still in the theaters. But I don't want Dustin to be shy about even semi-spoiling around me. Because I think I already heard stuff as happens. So I don't know everything, but I think I know a few definitive things. So don't feel bad about that, Dustin. But I am curious to know where you fall on the spectrum, because I know, like I said, I know big changes were made or instituted or something in this story, and some people were like, "That's a really good thing for the franchise," and some people were like, "That's terrible for the franchise, and it's disloyal." What say you? And how'd you like the film, too?
The film, so it's a Star Wars movie, so it's kind of fun to watch while you're in it. I find that most of the people that have problems with it start having problems with it once the movie's over. I don't know if that makes sense. Like you're in the movie and you're like, okay, yeah, fine. But then the credits hit and you're like, oh, that was what I watched. Like, now it's done. So... All right, let me just preface this. I'm not a huge Star Wars fan. I like it. I like the original trilogy, even Return of the Jedi. I think it's built around the chemistry between three people, Luke, Han, and Leia. I think that it was magic what they were able to capture back in those days. They used cutting-edge practical effects to achieve George Lucas and others' visions, and you really can't minimize the importance of Star Wars or the sheer spectacle of it. Then what happened was we got three prequels, which were lackluster in quality, to say the least, and now we're treated to a Star Wars, for better or worse, from every year for the foreseeable future until we're dead. And here's the deal. I'm not a huge Star Wars fan because by and large, most of the movies have been not great. So I don't have that like chip on my shoulder going in. I think a lot of people had, where it's like, this has to be good because my whole life is based around Star Wars. I don't have that. But what I do have is a passion for continuity.
Yeah.
A passion for continuing the vision that the franchise is and being loyal to the franchise. For instance, it's like Fantastic Beasts. Yes, it's its own thing, but it also needs to respect the Harry Potter films. And even if I'm not a huge Harry Potter fan, which I'm more of a Potter fan than a Star Wars fan, you have to keep like, okay, this is what magic can do and this is what it can't do. You have to keep the continuity going. And this is a long preface, but what I mean by all of this is the film irks me in a lot of ways, and I'm not going to hide behind the guise of like, oh, I'm a fan and you've offended me. I'm going to hide behind the guise of, this doesn't make sense given what I've seen of Star Wars. Um, there are a lot of things that the Force is able to do in this film that it's never been able to do, and that it shouldn't be able to do. There's a lot of character decisions in this film that I completely disagree with and I think are completely out of left field and wrong choices. There are performances here that I think probably don't fit the tone of the saga. There is story elements that are confusing and needlessly convoluted. I don't have a problem with complication. I have a problem with needless complication. There are characters that are introduced in this film that are completely pointless, and their job could have been given to an existing character and made us care for the existing character more than we currently do. And I take issue with that. There are a handful of morality lessons and somewhat politically motivated lessons that are forced down the audience members' throats, some of which make sense, some of which don't make any sense. And all that to say, I kind of disagree with just about every decision that this film makes.
Yikes.
But having said that, it's a fun movie to watch. It's got great spectacle, great special effects. Even things that don't really make logical sense are fun to watch. You have your story, your A story, if you want to call it that, with Rey and Kylo Ren, which is still the most intriguing relationship and character arc going on here in this new trilogy. And that's genuinely fun to watch. Everything that they give Poe Dameron to do and General Leia, and especially Finn and new character Rose, the all of the things that they give them to do are awful and terrible story wise, but not necessarily unfun to watch. And lastly, and this is sort of where I hang my hat, everything that they did for Luke Skywalker in this film was wrong.
Oh no.
It's not hard, but if you go to YouTube, you can find compilations of Mark Hamill basically saying the same thing. So much so that he had to issue an apology on Twitter for bad mouthing the movie.
He had to skywalk it back.
He had to skywalk it back. He did. But I think that's where I'll rest my hat, because it's there's a lot that you can cover here, and there's a lot of things I could say. All of it's already been said, but the thing that now being a couple weeks out from having seen it, that still bothers me is literally everything about the Luke Skywalker character. And I don't think it's necessarily spoiler territory for me to say what I'm about to say, but if you really genuinely don't want to know anything, skip forward a little bit. So Luke Skywalker.
Hey, can I ask you something before you actually go into this?
Yeah.
So two questions that you can kind of round into this answer.
Sure.
One is characters do and should evolve and possibly change, maybe even regress to some extent based on what's happened to them. I don't know anything about this story. I would think that that Luke's failure with Kylo Ren might trigger some behavior from him that may not be characteristic of the Luke Skywalker we know, and I guess that's up to interpretation whether or not that's a good thing, or whether that's realistic and that we should feel sympathy for him because he probably regrets how he reacted to Kylo Ren. Again, I don't even know what the hell is going on in this film. So that's the first thing I want to bring up. The sort of question of, do you think that it has anything to do with the element of change that comes with age or regret or human weakness? And also, I want to point people towards episode 103 of our show. And this is a statement and question. In that episode, at the 33-minute mark, there's time code on that. You can go look at it right now. It's episode 103 where we talk about Spotlight. At the 33-minute mark, Dustin tells me about a dream he had about Star Wars, wherein he talks at length about how in the dream you either saw the script or
I
in
don't
the
even
script.
remember this.
Oh, it's I'll insert. I'll try and insert in this episode. I'll insert in the middle right here. Listen to Dustin's dream about Luke Skywalker.
Can I break format for a second and before we talk about Spotlight and just tell you this little Star Wars anecdote that I have?
Yeah, I'd like to hear this.
Okay, so this is strange. I had a dream last night that it was about Star Wars. Sometimes I have dreams where I watch movies, and I had a dream where I watched The Force Awakens, and the plot that that my subconscious came up with was freaking awesome. And now I'm super not into seeing the movie because I'm like, it won't be as good as what I came up with while I was asleep. And
by the way, the last time you said this is not the first dream Dustin has had about The Force Awakens.
Is it not?
Maybe 2 years ago, you said had a dream that, and you talked about it on the podcast, I believe. I could find it. You talked about how you had a dream that that you were working on the movie, and that
I have no memory of this.
And that J.J. Abrams was like, yeah, come, just come follow me, and you said, and it was bad. Like the sets were terrible.
No.
The actors were walking all over JJ, like he wasn't controlling them at all. Like Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher were all just like, yeah, whatever. And JJ was going like, okay. And you said, I woke up not feeling great about how it was going to turn out.
Well, that's kind of happened again. I'm kind of like, man, what I came up with was so cool. The idea in my head was like all I remember from the movie in my head was, and again, I don't know any of the relations between any of these characters, but who's the main guy in the movie? What's his name?
Hero?
I can't remember. Yeah, the
Finn?
guy, the Finn.
Yeah,
that's the male lead, right?
John
Okay.
Boyega.
Boyega. Oh, that's right. Okay, so it was a scene with him, and he was frozen upside down. You remember how Luke was frozen upside down in the second film, and he was in that cave with like the snowman or whatever, and he was trying to get the. So anyway, John Boyega was upside down. He was like that, and only this time, instead of like a snowman, it was Luke, and Luke was like hooded, and he was like. They were having this exchange, and what it was about was like Luke had not turned evil, but he had turned against the Jedi Order. And so he was like, he said, for so long, the Jedi told the Sith that they deal in absolutes, but we were doing the same thing. And we said, you're either a Jedi or you're not. And I'm nothing. He said, I am one with the Force now. And the Force is me. And so all of a sudden, like all these Force ghosts behind him, like Yoda and like Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon Jinn, like everybody, Anakin, all of these, and going all the way back to the very first person to ever use the Force. And they sit down and talk with John Boyega, and they're like, the thing is, the Jedi were not supposed to be political. The Jedi were not supposed to be policemen. The Jedi were here to instill love and instill peace in the world, not by force, but through, through, I don't know, love or whatever. And so anyway, Luke was like, so I am no longer a Jedi, and I am not a Sith. I am just simply the Force. And anyway, basically what he was getting at was like, we're gonna instate sort of, and like Yoda was there too, and he was like mentoring him too. He's like, so we're gonna almost reinstate the Jedi Order, but we're gonna do it the right way, and we're going to allow. I don't know how to explain it. But anyway, it was all like the Jedi were wrong and the Sith were obviously wrong, but it was like Yoda, essentially like Ghost Yoda being like, wrong we were to be political, and all of this stuff, and it was all like almost discounting the prequels, which is what I liked about it. Was like it said like, here's the prequels, but then it even was like, but they're stupid because look how the Jedi were. And I don't know, I just thought it was really cool. And that the idea of Luke just sort of not being anything and just being something new. And I don't know, I don't want to say like a gray area, but you know, just something apart. And, I don't know. I just thought that was cool. Anyway, whatever. It's probably not nearly as cool when I say it out loud as it was in my head and in my dream, but I was like super insanely excited about it when I saw it in my dream.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
That's really
I'm sure that's not what they're doing, because that kind of changes stuff and kind of paints the Jedi in a negative light. But for me to like look back and have like Yoda stand there as a ghost or whatever and be like, you know, we were wrong in the way that we got political. We got too involved in like trying to maintain order by force. Mm-hmm. We were trying to be these intergalactic, you know, peacekeepers, but instead of keeping peace, we actually promoted violence and we promoted disorder. And it's time that Luke, starting with Luke, who is, you know, just nothing, you know, this, you know, equally Jedi and Sith, I guess, or just nothing, will start something new. And I thought in my dream too, one of the cool things was Luke was using the Force lightning as well as like the Jedi mind tricks. So he was able to use Sith powers and Jedi powers and like totally new things, because he was just one with the Force in a way that the Jedi never were, because they never embraced the darkness, and the way that the Sith were because they never embraced the light. And anyway, I don't know, in my head that was really cool. So, anyway, I don't know what Luke will do in the new movie, but we'll see.
Was it anything like that? Because what you pitched to me in that dream sounded really awesome, and I'm thinking what you're about to tell me is not as cool.
So I had completely forgotten about that dream. So to answer your first question, they definitely frame it like, because of his failure with Kylo Ren and because of, you know, just aging and change, that would account for Luke's sort of difference in personality and character traits and choices that he makes now, as opposed to the Luke we last saw in Return of the Jedi. So they definitely frame it that way. It's up to audience interpretation whether or not they see Luke as the kind of character who does what this Luke does, or if they still feel like it's out of character. I'm in the latter camp. I feel like what this Luke is and does, the Luke that I know would not have become that, even given failure. You know, and I'll quote Mark Hamill here. There's a good interview where he's talking about it. He says that the Jedi would never give up. Jedi would, you know, no matter the magnitude of their mistake, they would find a way to fix it. And that's what Mark Hamill said was his hang up on the whole film. I didn't see this interview till after the film, but I was like, yes, Mark Hamill, like I agree with you that the Jedi have to maintain some sort of high ground here. The second you concede that the Jedi are evil, or at least at fault for what's happened,
equally at fault.
Yeah, you sort of undermine, if you go back and watch the old films, the effectiveness of the idea of the Jedi, because now we know, they weren't good for the galaxy. So I take issue with that. Like, I feel like the Jedi Order exists to maintain balance, to you know, make sure that good always triumphs over evil. And that, yes, there may be missteps along the way, but you have to keep, and you can admit that, you can have characters admit that, but you have to keep some sort of high ground, some sort of moral high ground for the Jedi, and say, but they always did this. Like, this was always good about them. This was that way. When you go back and watch the Jedi in any of the other movies, you're not hating them, because those movies really only work if you love the Jedi.
Can you help me understand by this analogy? So, take it from the point of view of like I hate this term, but a woke Catholic. Okay,
sure.
The institution itself, perfect. You know, for the sake of this argument,
Sure.
The human beings in charge of it and the implementation of it and the organization of it, very imperfect and at times unacceptably, catastrophically imperfect. Is it one of those things where we're talking about the humans involved are imperfect, or we're basically saying the whole institution of the Jedi is bupkis?
The film says the second.
The whole institution.
Yes. The entire idea of Jedi.
See, I'd be okay with like some Jedi took this message and they ran with it in the wrong way. And it's like, well, that speaks to human nature. But to say, never mind, the Jedi all were bad too. It's like, come on.
Yeah, it rubs me the wrong way. So to
especially
answer your
with the
second
kind of
question,
film that this starts out, this kind of franchise that starts out as is like a stark good evil allegory, and like I'm okay with getting in the weeds and getting sort of like morally gray, but that's where you bring in the people ran with it, not the Jedi themselves as an institution are like inherently blah blah blah. It's like you can bring moral complexity without compromising the integrity of the entire Jedi Order.
Yes,
okay,
agreed.
Gotcha. I'm with you.
So to answer your second question in regards to the dream, it's interesting. The dream, it partially comes true, mostly doesn't.
Damn.
the film paints a Luke Skywalker that because of his failure, it has essentially there's one of two ways this could go, right? One, he could, like the dream, become, the living embodiment of the Force, the living embodiment of the balance of the Force, where he's equally powerful in the light and in the dark. And he is, this conduit through which the Force is moving.
Yep.
So much so that he is, perhaps the strongest Force user that there ever has been. And you could go that way. The film goes another way. The film instead says, because of his failure, Luke Skywalker has shut himself off from the Force. He no longer has anything to do with the Force, and refuses to train Rey, refuses to help the cause of the rebellion against the First Order, refuses any sort of social interaction with anybody because the Force is in and living and through all things. So really, to be with people is to be with the Force, and he doesn't want that. So this is a Luke who refuses. This would be like, to use the Harry Potter analogy, this would be like fast forwarding a few years, and Harry refuses to pick up a wand.
I was gonna say that our hero is abdicating his calling.
Correct. And that's what I have a problem with. Yes, Luke made a mistake. Yes, Luke, is afraid of that mistake. Yes, Luke. But I agree with Mark Hamill. A Jedi would always, a true Jedi, right? But the film hates Jedi. But a true Jedi would always, no matter the magnitude of his mistake, would always seek to correct it. And if there is life in danger in the galaxy, a Jedi would not shrink from that challenge.
And even a Jedi, the character of Luke Skywalker wouldn't
the character of Luke Skywalker wouldn't. Somebody, this is, with great power comes great responsibility. Luke has great power. To see him say, whatever, is the opposite of a likable character.
Well, and the very first, so again, God, I'm no bigger a fan of Star Wars than you are, but like, I hate to get all nerdy on people like this, but I'm sure they love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so A New Hope, they're sitting in the control room, whatever. They just got on the Death Star, and they got control of the room, and they know where they know where Princess Leia is, and it's like, hey, that's where she is, the cell block. Yep. He's like, hey, forget it, like, we're not going to go after her. And he's like, we got to save her, and the idealistic Luke Skywalker that essentially stayed true in his character, even throughout, like, Empire and Return of the Jedi. This essential element of Luke Skywalker, which is like, he's going to save everyone.
Yeah.
Where the hell is that in this film? Because it sounds like it's nowhere.
It's nowhere. And here's my biggest problem with it. This is a Luke Skywalker who believed to the end that Anakin Skywalker could be redeemed.
Yep.
And guess what? He saw it happen.
He did it.
He has no reason to believe that Kylo Ren or any mistake that he makes can't be fixed. This is a Luke Skywalker who has seen perhaps, maybe not Palpatine, but in Darth Vader, maybe the most evil person in the galaxy, really the person responsible for the deaths on Alderaan and all of these things, redeem himself at the end. That is what this man has seen. And then to see him say, but my nephew, whatever.
Kids today, you can't tell them anything.
Yeah, kids today, I hate the millennials, or whatever. Like, it makes no sense. It does not fit his character. Yeah. I get that he's scared, and I get that he made a mistake.
Sure.
I understand that. What I don't understand is how he could see that as irreparable when not even Darth Vader was irredeemable. And that's what I have a problem with. I keep using this analogy, like when I explain it to friends or to family. But I think it fits. Like if you equate Harry Potter and Star Wars, I think it fits. This is sort of my second biggest problem, but it really dovetails into the problem with Luke. Is imagine a world where J.K. Rowling never wrote the epilogue in Deathly Hallows. Like it was literally just, okay, Voldemort's destroyed, the end. And then imagine she writes a sequel. Okay, so she writes this whole new Harry Potter story, and in this story, there's an evil bigger than Voldemort ever was. Harry is living alone on an island, depressed, cut off from everything, refuses to pick up a wand.
Kind of like Swiss Army Man.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes. Yes, he's dead on an island, farting his way to freedom.
You imagine the end of the Deathly Hallows where, like, they're pointing the wands at each other. It's slow motion. It's just the red and the green. Imagine, like, one end is Voldemort with the wand. He's making that face, and the other end is Daniel Radcliffe's butt. And he's just going like, I'm so sorry, Dustin.
No, that's fine. I love when my analogies get derailed for comedy.
Go watch Swiss Army Man, people.
Yes. But imagine this world where essentially because of what Harry and his friends did in the saga we love, the world is a worse place. Imagine that. And now imagine the idea of going back to revisit the original saga and knowing that the world is worse because of what they do.
Yeah.
Imagine that. And that's exactly what this new trilogy has done. The world is worse than it ever was. And Luke is more unhappy than he ever was. Han and Leia, more unhappy than they ever were. And one of them's dead. And like Chewbacca, unhappy. His best friend's dead. Like, imagine that world. And now imagine, obviously we always have the originals to go back to, but imagine now looking at those original films, knowing that all of this struggle and all of the heartache and pain that these characters go through results in the world becoming a worse place. And yes, like I can understand the idea of like, well, but it's not a worse place because blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, the First Order didn't just destroy Alderaan. They destroyed like 8 planets all at one time in The Force Awakens, and they're killing characters we love, and the characters that are still alive that we love are unhappy. I don't understand why this is what we're getting, because it's so much more valuable to have a Luke who, maybe it's expected. Maybe they're trying to do something unexpected, but because I do think sort of the mantra of Star Wars, The Last Jedi, is subversion for the sake of subversion.
You want to do something unexpected? Make a good movie.
Yes, exactly. But you want to do something unexpected? Really, like, give Luke a wife and a couple of kids, and let us see that after all that he's been through, his life is better.
Yeah. Like,
let us see that. Essentially, it's like Lord of the Rings. At the end, Sam gets Rosie and has kids. Like, that's, and Aragorn gets Arwen, and everything is great. And I'm not saying like everything always has to be a happy ending, but at the end of these fantasy stories, I want to know that what the characters go through
was worth it.
Yeah, that makes the world a better place.
Yeah.
Because, and not only does it make the world a better place for the world, but for the
Yeah.
characters. Now, Lord of the Rings, you can argue is different because, you have Frodo, the world is a better place, but Frodo can't quite, whatever, so he has to go to the Undying Lands, and that's fine, but he's happy doing that.
Yeah.
And yes, it's sad that he's going to leave the Shire, because the Shire can never be the same place that it was before.
Yeah.
But that in and of itself teaches, this valuable lesson, and then the character gets rewarded in his own way, just like Sam gets rewarded in his own way, and Aragorn in his own way. But with this, all of the characters are miserable, and it's like just take Princess Leia, General Leia. I'm still fighting this same battle that I've been fighting my entire life. My son killed my husband, so I've lost them both. I don't know where Chewie is. I don't know where any of my friends are. My brother, who knows where he is? Like, all of this stuff to me is incredibly depressing.
Yeah.
And it
sounds horrible.
It does. And you can argue all day till you're blue in the face that, like, oh, but the galaxy was a better place for a time. And it's like, well, yeah, but and you can also argue like, oh, but there has to be conflict in this movie. Yes, there does. But how about the characters at least are happy? Right. I would settle for that. Like, give me characters who are happy, and I'm fine. To use another example, Avatar: The Last Airbender to Legend of Korra, same thing. The characters are either dead or whatever, but the thing is, like, you have characters from the original series like Katara, who actually is, happy. Like, yes, her husband has died, and that's the whole reason. But the thing is, she's happy, and like, to me, that's what you need in a fantasy story. That's why it's fantasy, that the world gets saved. And I don't know. Like, I just don't see at the end of Return of the Jedi, when all the planets in the galaxy are like cheering and doing their happy Ewok dance, that like the next day, I guess, Luke's like, okay, well, like, I don't know what I'm going to do now. And he doesn't do anything until Kylo Ren is born.
Right.
And then after Kylo Ren's born, he finally does something. And then he quits again. And it's like, I just don't agree with anything here.
So would you would say like a general audience who is completely detached from the canon and just wants to see an entertaining film, they'll be very satisfied. But anyone who, kind of like Bright, anyone who cares at all about the world building and the characters and the continuity in their history is going to be disappointed.
So I would say it's a well-made movie, but I really don't think so. There's some gaping plot holes and like plot conveniences that really prevent this from actually being a really good movie, even for a general audience. But I will say that it's fun to watch. So, and it's a weird conundrum. If you're able to shut your brain off to what Star Wars was, or what you wish it would be, or what continuity says it should be, if you can divorce yourself from that, or even if you've never seen a Star Wars movie and you go in, you'll probably have some fun. The problem is, if you do care anything about continuity or anything about this world or anything about these characters, you're going to start noticing that it's disappointing.
Yeah.
So that's where, I hate to say it, but really it's a disappointing ride overall.
Well, I'm glad I didn't see it in theaters, because if you and I tend to agree on broad topics like this. The minutia, I think we'll have to see once it gets to the rental circuit. But okay, well, people, if you haven't gone to see Star Wars yet, there's still time. It'll be in theaters for many years.
Yes.
But check it out. And thanks for listening and watching. And catch us on our next episode, because we're going to talk about some other stuff that it seems like the bar for pleasing the crowds pleasing the crowds is pretty low. Both Bright and Star Wars seem to hit that bar easily. It's just anything above that is a bridge too far. But some films, I don't know, can they please the crowd even? Like, can they even do that?
Yeah.
We'll have to see
in
episode 145.
Hey.
Thanks for watching, guys. Check us out tomorrow. Have a good evening. So that's like the end of CBS News. And have a good night.
And have a good night.
Bye, guys.